Welcome to Talksicology, brought to you by Recovery Unplugged, the place where we talk about all things substance abuse, recovery, and mental health, with guests offering varying perspectives and viewpoints. Hosts Joseph Gordo and Jason Cabello share about their addiction and recovery and other serious subject matter through lighthearted yet candid conversation.
I have a lot of nostalgia for like the first 2 months of the pandemic when no one could get anything done and we just existed and we were like at home together. Like, it was nice.
Yeah, I shared that with people. I was on a different side of that. But, I do like the sort of brutal honesty emotionally that it brought out in people. Mm-hmm. Kind of like refreshing change from the pro forma of life, where people were just kind of apropos to what we're be talking about. Yeah. It's like people were just broken down to like their humanness, and this sort of like business and things that need to be accomplished were sort of secondary to many of the conversations I was on Zoom with during the pandemic. Right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was like a pause on that like go rush of life, where it was like, oh, there's nothing to do. Like, what do I do? How do I feel when I'm just here? And it was like,
this would be great topics for the show.
I don't know. Are they recording?
That we're already recording.
Are they already recording?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
Welcome.
Welcome.
You've got mail.
So today we're with Cody Cowan, CEO?
COO.
COO.
Yes.
COO.
Different.
Yeah.
Pretentious title, I suppose.
Yeah.
I respect a COO more than a CEO. A COO gets shit done.
COO of NIVA.
Correct.
National Independent Venue Association.
Yes.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So glad for you to have me here. It's a pleasure.
Cody and I met on a Zoom call a couple months back.
Yeah.
And just one of those things where it was just like instantly like, oh shit, you're wearing a No Comply shirt. Like, oh yeah, man, I used to be in like hardcore, go to hardcore. It used to be. I'm into like hardcore and grew up going to hardcore shows. And I'm like, look, there's like a poster right behind me. And like instantly we're just like jabbering away. Everybody else is like, can we talk about that? We're like, no, we're talking about 80s and 90s New York City hardcore right now. Give us a few minutes.
Yeah.
And then
it's like, take a break, guys. Stage dive keeps you more alive.
Nice one. And then we got to talking and chatting a little bit, and then things evolved, and we ended up doing our first Elsewhere program.
Yes.
At the NIVA convention in New Orleans, early June of 2024, and I had an amazing time. It was great, and Cody came and supported, and I'll let you talk about it a little bit. So, who are you? Where are you from? What are you doing?
My name is Cody Cowan, and I'm born and raised from Austin, Texas.
One of the OGs.
I've been called a unicorn before.
Yeah.
Which, is weird, but also kind of neat, I guess.
Yeah.
To grow up in a city that was so small, honestly, and then all of a sudden be like a stranger in a strange land, which seems so apropos to most of my life's experience.
I love that for the Austin locals, the two questions are, it's like, where'd you go to high school? Or if for the even more OG people, it's like, what hospital were you born in?
Yeah. Are you from Austin?
Seton, Maine.
All right. Yeah,
Seton, Maine.
Same, Seton.
But see, I didn't grow up here though. I didn't grow up here. I was born here, but I didn't grow up here. So I'm like a semi-unicorn. No, Laredo, Texas.
Laredo?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
It's a hop, skipping it. Not a hop, skip, and jump. It's quite a distance from
a long hop, a hefty skip, and a hell of a jump.
Yeah. But we used to do, Laredo used to be the site of the annual Texas Hardcore Super Bowl. And I don't know if they still do that.
Wow.
But there used to be this pizza joint. You would appreciate this. There's this place called Sal's Pizza in Laredo, Texas on San Bernardo Avenue, which was like where you cruised on Sundays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But you would walk in and it was a pizza joint. And then to the left and to the right, there were pool halls. And if you went to the right, it was guys in Wranglers, big belt buckles, vaquero cowboy guys, listening to Tejano music, whatever. And if you went to the left, it was all ages, punk rock kids, punk rock shows. And we all just lived in harmony. There was never that classic punk rivalry of, We all smoked weed together on the roof. It was...
Yeah.
I was gonna say the setup was like the perfect example of how punk and, for lack of a better term, the traditions of Texas existed together
Absolutely.
through history, except for the just hanging out smoking weed together. That was a twist for me, because here it was like in many places in Texas, it was like getting chased and beaten up, and part of I think finding an outsider scene was a way of finding people you could be safe around, you know, and there being strength in numbers. I mean, I hate for it to be that gritty, but it like made a big difference being the one kid with, the crash shirt walking down the drag versus being the 12 kids walking down the street. It was like, a different tone, and you got left alone to just be yourself,
Well, see, like my era was like late 90s, early 2000s, right? Which like, I think like that, like violence, like the police violence and all that was for the most part kind of done, at least in South Texas it was, to where like, you'd get people hollering stuff at you out the car window, the preferred term back then was freaks.
Yeah.
Oh, you got it easy.
Yeah. They call you freaks or los frikis.
Los frikis.
I mean, I kind of dig that.
I would have worn that as a badge. In Miami, it was odd because where most of the shows were in what's now known as like South Beach.
Yeah.
But back then in the 80s, it was an old Cuban neighborhood. So it wasn't the South Beach that you know of today, where there were clubs everywhere and stuff like that. So it was a very sort of like quiet little beach town and stuff. And then we'd go to some other clubs, and there was always a lot of fights, but it was always with people who were like, we were looking for fights, they were looking for fights, and like that would happen. But most of the getting picked on for being a little bit different or anything happened more in like the suburbs.
Yeah.
But like the city folk was kind of
But well, what was your, like, I mean, national, tell me what NIVA stands for again. I'm the worst.
It is a mouthful.
Yeah.
These acronyms. National Independent Venue Association.
Yes. Well, so I mean, to me, Sal's was an important independent venue growing up, right? And then we would make road trips to Austin on Fridays. We would just leave on Friday after school. Someone would pick everybody up. We'd drive to Austin. No real plan.
Yeah, we didn't need a plan.
No, we didn't have internet and shit. And we would generally end up at Emo's, right? And
work there for a long time.
Yeah, and we accidentally saw Johnny Cash the last time he played at Emo's. Yeah. It was like 99, 2000, somewhere around there. Just him with it, but like Emo's and Sal's and the old Virgin record store are like venues that like to me really remind me of like a safe place in my youth that like helped me find community, helped me find, you're talking about, what was your venue back in the day?
I mean, there's so many awesome eras of Austin music venues. My generation though, I'm 46, so it was like late 80s, 90s into the 2000s. I say 80s because I started going to shows when I was like 14 probably.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of all ages spaces. I mean, probably like one of the more famous or infamous clubs was Liberty Lunch. It was a larger space though, but I got to see a lot of pretty awesome, huge, big names in punk and hardcore.
Yeah.
But then, of course, when Emo's was opened in Austin in the early 90s, I eventually ended up working there in like 97. I mean, it's kind of like the rest was history for a lot of the things we'll be talking about tonight.
Yes.
The rest was history.
I mean, right. so much of it is gone in Austin, or it's different,
Well, I'll say this because I think, Jason, we were talking about this a little, but like as a Austin unicorn and someone who's chosen a leadership role in the music scene here, I often get asked both by music people and people I'll term civilians, I bet you miss the old days, and I bet, things are so much better then. But like, man, I grew up in an Austin that had generational institutional knowledge about like what the it time was.
Yeah.
Right. Which it turns out in reflection, it's like, youth culture always defines the it time, right?
Right.
So there's always a next generation,
Yes.
and then the older generation being like the get off my lawn people. And you weren't there in '81 at the Ritz at the Black Flag show, so what do you know, punk? It's like
you weren't here for Janet's job
Or
on
you
an
weren't there
Armadillo
at
World
Armadillo.
headquarters. Yeah.
my parents were counterculture people. They met protesting at UT, so I heard about the One Night and about Armadillo and Vulcan and all these sorts of things. So just like generation of kind of like one-upmanship, I'd say, which is like it's a human thing, but it's also a very Austin thing. Kind of like, oh, you're not cool. You don't know, So like I kind of, one of my takeaways is sort of like a DIY big boys Discord, like kind of inspired punk was like, fuck off. It was like, seriously, it's not where you're from, it's where you're at. And like, there's always something cool that's been happening. So no, I wasn't at Raoul's, or no, I wasn't, at the Ritz back in the day or whatever. But, there's just always something that's cool that's been happening.
Yeah.
And the odds are there's something just as cool or cooler happening now. It's just, at 46, I'm like not invited to that party. And quite frankly, I don't feel like getting the party started at 2 a.m.
Right.
It's like I did my time.
What do we think the it place is right now? As a bunch of guys,
no idea.
I have no idea. I have to like keep it real,
Yeah.
However, when I was looking into that, I'm also a music photographer, even if I haven't been out in a while. But
do you know Gary?
Gary, yeah, I know Gary. It's a tight knit music photography scene as well. But there was a lot of like late night ditch shows and DIY bridge pop-ups and things, and I got really excited being like, well, am I going to be the creepy 40-year-old with the camera at the show, or oh, never mind, it starts at like 2 or 3, and I'm like, well,
I'm not going to be there at all.
It's great. I've been self-selected out of this. It's like nature has said not for you, and that's fine. We all have our moments,
So I know for myself, maybe a couple years before I started going to shows, I had seen the documentary, Another State of Mind.
Oh, yeah.
The social distortion documentary. And I saw it, and it instantly, like that, and like the young ones, and things like that just really spoke to me. Putting the makeup on. And
I just kind of like that sympathetic look when I'm on stage. It just looks more natural, too.
He's sympathetic.
Yeah. So that was the thing that made me want to ultimately, like, the second I saw it, and they had like the mosh pit, not pre-mosh pit, calling it a mosh pit. It was like the circle pit. Yeah. The second I saw that, I was like, it's my identity now, I guess. Like, whoops. And that, and like, because I was already skateboarding, so it was like that and like suicidal tendencies and stuff. That prompted me to start looking into it. My parents were in the music business, so it was tough to rebel against them. As I'm sure with your parents, I was like, I'm going to be a punk rocker now. And my stepdad's like, oh, cool, yeah, I have this Sex Pistol 7-inch you might like.
Yeah. See, I was like, but I'm not just going to be a punk rocker. I'm going to be a straight edge kid. And it was like, what does this even mean?
So what attracted you to the music, to the lifestyle? What do you remember? Like,
oh yeah, I mean, oh man, hindsight is 2020. It's so great being alive to be able to look back on it all, though. But I think there's like, it's multi-layered. On part, it was like and you and I were talking about this in New Orleans. It's like I feel like I and the people I met in junior high ultimately self-selected one another as neurodivergent kids and poor kids to like create our own scenes. So there are like needs being met in terms of ADHD and autism and our ability to communicate in ways that I think other people just looked at us and kind of squinted and was kind of like, you're not normal, are you? So there was that, but there was also this maybe obsessiveness that comes with that brain setup as well, that the music just, it felt so powerful. And I think the act of finding purpose through something that you're creating with other people is really powerful, right? It's really powerful. And to your point, watching things like Another State of Mind and seeing those things that were clearly so disruptive and questioning the status quo and kind of growing up feeling like an outsider, not really getting, like, intellectually seeing how things work, but just going like, this makes absolutely no sense. Why is the world set up like this? This is absolute garbage, you know, and unfair and wrong. You know, I think that sort of idealism sort of brought a lot of us together, particularly when we discovered political punk and, you know, things like Dead Kennedys or Subhumans or Crass or so on and so forth, and hardcore like Sick of It All, you know, or Gorilla Biscuits or You Did It A, where there's like this, we can change the world shit infused, you know, of course, Minor Threat, Fugazi, et cetera, et cetera. Have to say Big Boys again, Hometown Heroes, you know, just this, like, you are beautiful, you are great who you are, but you can also change the world. And I think that was really powerful and resonated with us and kicked it off. And then straight edge just sort of happened organically with a bunch of our friends. I don't know if it was like the influence of some of the music, it'd be feeling like a more extreme or more pure way of being like idealistic, or also like, you know, both of my grandfathers died from addiction related disease, one being smoking, emphysema, and lung related disease, and the other being alcoholism. Even though my dad's father was sober at the time of his death, he had killed his liver before I was born. So, you know, that just sort of kind of put me in a position to being like, had awareness of addiction. I had awareness of consequences for certain lifestyles and genetics. And when I was young, I was just like, I don't want any part of this. And, you know, I think I lucked out that I had parents at least that put a lot of these thoughts in my brain for whatever they meant later.
Well, it's interesting thinking about like straight edge as like this like active rebellion within like a rebellious group already. Right. You know, like you know, in my punk rock times, it was, you know, we liked the political punk and then we liked like the crusty punk, you know, and the crust punk was very like, so me and like my crew, we were very much like, let's get fucked up.
Los Crudos?
Right. Yes. Yeah. Los Crudos. There was a band back in the day called the Aztecs. They did an album called Straight Outta Rehab because at one point all the members were in rehab at the same time. And then they all relapsed together and recorded an album.
You know, what else did you do?
But you know, I've always seen like kind of two, in my brain there's two groups of straight edgers, right?
Yeah.
There's kind of the little bit more arrogant kind of Minor Threat, Fugazi kind of straight edgers, and then there was the straight edgers that came out of like the late 90s hardcore kind of revival that didn't know how to mosh right.
Who let these kids in?
Get off my lawn.
You know, but like now, like when I think about like recovery stuff, right? Like I do see recovery as very much like a very punk thing to do. It is an active rebellion.
I mean, I believe so too.
And even within that, like Recovery Unplugged, like what we do, like, you know, we are very much a home where we get the wayward children of like other treatment centers that like, you know, people who couldn't fit into like a mold of more traditional Texas treatment.
How's the song go? Against the grain is where I stay, you know?
Yeah. Because I mean, there's this thing that like, and I sponsored, you know, a lot of the younger punk or hardcore kids would gravitate towards me if they were in treatment, or I'd see them at meetings and stuff to like try to sponsor them. And
you're like, I didn't know there was old hardcore guys.
Right. But
going dead or in prison?
A lot of the people that I grew up with, unfortunately are, but you know, and a lot of them would have this mentality like, man, it's just such like a, you know, I don't know, man. It's like I go to treatment and people are like telling me what to do. And it's like, motherfucker, if you used like I used and the dope man told you, be at the corner at 3 a.m., your ass is going to be at the corner at 2:50 a.m. and start calling because he told you to be there. Like, that's the ultimate, like something is controlling you.
Yeah.
Like taking it back. It's like, yes, you do, or some people, at least if I'm sponsoring you, like you have to follow a set of principles or do things like I do, but it's not like I'm telling you to do it. Like I'm giving you the suggestions, you're asking me how I did it, and I'm freely sharing it with you. And if you want to come along and lead a better way,
if you don't want to get high, I suggest you do this. If you don't, then okay.
What was I was looking through, I told you I got this 101 AA sayings, book of AA sayings, and I busted a couple of them out when we were in New Orleans, but some of them are. I mean, all of them are very cool. Some are ridiculous. To your point, though, you don't go to the whorehouse to get a ham sandwich.
Yep.
I don't know if you can say that one anymore, but you know, yeah. Or if you go to a barber, expect to get a cut.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I need to borrow that, or give me a Amazon link to it. Is it an old book?
It's a newer book.
Is it a newer book?
I found it on Amazon.
I would love to read that.
101 AASA.
Yeah.
We've gotten into this one before.
We've talked about each other's
like least favorites.
Yeah.
And favorites.
Or what pissed me off a lot, because I went to meetings for 7 years before ultimately getting clean.
Yeah.
And it was like I would hear these fucking sayings, and I used to just want to fucking punch people, and they'd be like, "You could live a life beyond your wildest dreams, and I wish you a slow recovery," and all that stuff. And it's like,
I wish you a slow recovery. That's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, exactly.
Just suffer longer.
That's how I took it. Like when I was first going to, or when H&I meetings would come into, my 20 times in detox, and people would say stuff like that. I'm like, bitch, a fucking slow recovery. I feel like shit,
Yeah.
But then once it makes sense and you realize what people are talking about, and you're like, okay, it's
well. Let's get back to the music stuff, because you were talking about kind of finding some community and kind of your group of people sort of self-selecting of the square pegs round holes kind of all getting together, right? So then what venue starts to be like y'all's spot, I guess? Like where do y'all find your safe place, your third place, or whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, I think much to your story, if there wasn't for like the coffee shops / music venues or Elks Lodges, or shout out to all the moms and pops who open up their garages or living rooms for DIY shows. I mean, we would never have had those seminal experiences. But I think even just part of the attraction, I mean, I'll get to your question, but part of the attraction too of straight edge was like we go to junior high or later high school when we started playing live and recording, and we played Liberty Lunch, opening for Strife and Sick of It All. And,
nice.
I'll drop that one because I feel pretty proud of that.
That's a good one. Yeah,
I mean that's like a real band from New York, down in Texas. Yeah. We're opening,
not just the
clobber in time,
the favor being done. It was like, okay, this feels good. But where was I going with that? Oh, we go to high school, and it was like, people would be like, what'd you do this weekend? Oh, man, fucking keggers, and we got wasted and blah, blah, blah. And meanwhile, we just looked at that with sort of like, I don't know, snobbish disdain or something. Kind of like, what did y'all do? We fucking played a show in Houston with our friends who we were co-recorded a 7-inch with and pressed some new t-shirts at the skate park. It was kind of like people would in high school just be like, what are you talking about? And we were like,
nerd.
Yeah. We were like, cool shit is what we're talking about. Like, how much fucking cooler is that than, literally telling the same story about the kegger every weekend, because that was at least a hot take from high school, right?
Yeah.
And
just talking about who passed out this week or who puked on who this.
Yeah. Oh my God, and I think, for balance, I think later we understood the revelry and stupidity when many of us quit being straight edge. However, at the time, it felt really cool to be part of something that was just like completely different, and a nascent growing hardcore and straight edge scene in Texas of just symbiotically of people our age, from Houston to Laredo to like Tyler, Texas, and like all over, with great music happening. It was almost like living in this moment where you're like, is this the new Renaissance?
Right.
It felt like really like something special was happening, and I suppose in a very teeny tiny way it was. But we had tons of coffee shops and places that probably be forgotten in time now. But it wasn't until the late '90s, I think, when we converged on emos and left high school that then became like
the spot.
The spot, and for a buddy of mine, Graham Williams, who is still working very strongly in the music scene here in Austin and in Texas, ended up both getting a job there because of this. There was a guy named Jim Straitedge who worked there, who was one of these older kids who was at the Rich Show and went on tour with Black Flag and all these things. And, it was like we were trying to get our friend to help sneak us into the Dwarf Show. at South by Southwest at Emos, and it was like, oh, I can't let anyone in. And it was like, our friend was like, oh, but this is Graham and Cody, and they're both straight edge. And he was like, quit teasing me. He's like, what's your name? Jim Straight Edge. Your name is Jim Straight Edge? Like, yes, I'm the only straight edge person in Texas. And it's like, he's, about 20 years older than us, or 15, 20 years older. And it was like, oh, Jim, come with us. But like a lifelong,
we're going to show you
what the kids are doing. So there's like this 30-year-old dude hanging out with a bunch of teenagers, which I'm sure, his peers were kind of like, why? But fucking, we had like a real vibrant thing going on, and we both got a job at Emos. And then of course, like typical hardcore kids were like, how do we get our whole crew here? And we ended up slowly taking probably like a third or 2/3 at one point of the staff were just all of our homies from like some mix of the hardcore skater BMX scene.
Yeah.
We're all like running that place. So it was like, we believed, not like we didn't think we physically owned it. We believed this is our club. This is our place. This is literally belongs to our people and our community.
We had a great racket going on at the first club that I started working at in South Florida called The Edge. So I started sneaking in, and then ultimately got a job because like, hey, maybe you could help us keep other people from sneaking in, since you're not causing any problems. You're too young to get into some of the shows or the after, because it would turn into a club after the shows and stuff. Always sneak into there. And so the manager, who's still a good friend of mine, Bill Howard, like got me a job working the door. And then it was the same thing. Like the entire hardcore crew was like the security, and they would have raves after the show. So I mean, we'd like not rob, but like confiscate the drugs and then sell them back and things like that. It was a really good fucking racket.
And
why not?
In that world, drugs and cash are like, it's like charge it to the game. You fucked up, you fucked up,
It's so wild hearing y'all talk about this, because like it's almost like when people are talking about like their drunkalogs, and it's like, oh, like the same experiences in different venues, right? Because like in Laredo, there was a lot of music that you couldn't find. Right. Pre-internet, right? Like they didn't have it at Best Buy or wherever. So we would have to special order certain CDs, and the only place I did it was Sam Goody. And then we eventually, when we started turning 16, we all got jobs at the Sam Goody at the mall. And it was like the spot where like the punk rock kids would come and hang out. And we would like, I remember ordering fresh fruit for rotting vegetables. In 1999 in Laredo, the only way to get it was to special order it through Sam Goody. And you'd leave your $5 and fill out a little slip like, this is the album I want. And then, like a month later, they'd call you.
Sessions. I guess you're probably too young. 99 is too young for Sessions. Do you remember Sessions?
I don't remember Sessions.
Sessions was a zine, a skate zine, which to my knowledge at the time as a kid was the only place you could get like the Dead Kennedys t-shirt. Or the album, or the Doc Martens, or Vans, really. I mean, these things didn't exist at retail, and
I could get Docs and Journeys.
See,
get off my lawn.
Yeah, there was like a blow up. In the mid to late '90s, where you had even pre-Hot Topics, you had places like Journeys and malls and stuff that there was like
when Hot Topic opened in Laredo. I mean, we were counting down the days.
Did you walk out like some sort of revolutionary with like bullet belts and pyramid belts just strapped?
Yeah. I walked out with like a fishnet shirt and like a spike necklace.
I definitely had the opposite end of the spectrum.
But see, for a kid in a relatively small town, that
how old are you?
I turned 40 on Sunday.
All right, yeah. So it's like that seminal moment. Like we observed that too. We're all snobs, just like the people who came before us. Like, these kids with their mall shops. What do they think next? The internet?
Right?
We had to get it the hard way. You had to go to the show.
Or Sessions.
But it was really important. It was really important.
CDs.
It was really important. That was like the entire world was about to change at that moment. That was like the first step into it.
Right.
And Hot Topic was a spot for like us to find each other, because like in Laredo there was like 6 high schools, right? And like there was little groups at all the high schools, and some kids, if they didn't have cars or somebody telling them like, hey, there's this pizza joint that your people are at, you didn't know that existed, but you'd meet people at the mall, you'd meet them at the Hot Topic or at the Sam Goody, and then like I can right now think of like 6 kids that we randomly met that became part of the crew. and like we introduced them to like a world where they were okay. You know what I mean?
Totally. Well, I think you make a great point. And, I just want to observe, like, I grew up in Austin, and after having generations of that, you don't know, I know sort of thing. I mean, on the one hand, it was a privileged, I grew up on Garner Avenue, which is over near Umlauf Center, kind of like Barton Springs.
Yeah.
And I had on the one hand,
it's a high dollar neighborhood nowadays.
Yeah, the house my parents got, the probably like 900 square feet shotgun house that my parents got in the late 70s for $30,000. We track it on Zillow or whatever, just out of curiosity. It's the land itself is worth between $1.5 million and $2 million. My dad's like, I can't believe I didn't hold on to that. And I was like, Dad, so you're telling me you could have held on to that? Would we have gotten this other place that we moved to? And he was like, well, no. And it's like, let it go.
Yeah.
Like, but on the my point was like, one block away to my right, there was Marsha Ball, who was a really respected, well-known, and beloved Austin singer and songwriter. Another block from there was Michael Johnson of the Killer Bees, who's JJ's son I grew up with, who's like one of my best friends growing up. Then like 3 blocks to my left was like Jimmy Vaughn.
Yeah.
And like, you're like going in and seeing Billy Gibbons and Willie Nelson at Guero's having a taco next to you and just kind of like a nod. And it was just like the crazy art. I mean, Slacker was, all of us kind of went, but like it was real.
Right.
It was like, it was real.
Yeah.
And that movie was of real people. Rest in peace, Teresa Taylor, who recently passed from Butthole Surfers, who was the face of that show.
Oh, the Madonna's pubic hair.
Yeah. But, the point being, like, I think we grew up with a very hyperinflated sense of what reality was for art and music, but also maybe a little hyperinflated sense of like how cool it was. Like that, and being Gen X was like, it's like, it's not cool to say you're cool, but like, we all know we're way cooler than everyone, But that shit is like bullshit, because I think to the point you started to make, this is all about inclusion, and it's all about being able to express yourself. And if any medium or dumb mall shop allows that, and allows people who would otherwise be alone or maybe not surviving being a young person because of a variety of factors, that it creates a community space. Or even you see a shirt or like net stockings or pyramid belt, and you're like, what's up? Like, we're cool. You're cool. You're not alone. You're not alone.
Yeah.
We're all in this together. You're not in this alone.
Very different in South Florida. It was like, if you saw somebody, and I still like, it still baffles me. If you saw somebody who was like a skater or fucking wearing a Fred Perry or something like that, it was like, I'm going to check this person. Like, I'm going to see what this person's about.
Because people from Texas are nicer than people from Florida.
It was like, dude, I have I'm not going to mention his name. He's a good friend of mine who's in recovery, and he moved from LA to Miami and went to where everybody was hanging out, like had been around just as long as everybody else had, and just kind of showed up and was like, oh, hey guys, what's up? And got fucking pounded. They stole his fucking docs. And like, that's what it was like in South Florida. It was fucking, it was.
I've heard stories like that coast to coast.
Yeah, it was.
But here, all we had was Sessions magazines and like a sound exchange or something. So you saw a person with the Dead Kennedys t-shirt on. You were like, I don't know them. Who are they? Are they from Laredo? Where are they from? What are they listening to? Right. And because how else were you going to find out about what the next thing was, or what was, there was like, part of it was like, hey, we get each other, but I don't want to oversell that. It was also like, what's going on? Is there a show in town? And there was like, I mean, that at least was my impression. I don't know if my friends had the same angle on it, but we all behaved the same. It was like, there's certainly maybe like, hey, what's going on, to figure out danger, because there's plenty of danger in our scene.
I can imagine.
But more often than not, everyone was just living in an island in some place. And especially in Texas, Austin was possibly had the most visible concentration of like punks,
For sure. So I don't know. I'm just thinking about, y'all's recent trip to New Orleans, and you took the Elsewhere program there and did kind of your first deal. And I know you shared with me that there was all these people who were like, oh, like I've been sober for 4 months and I've never been to a meeting because I didn't think I'd fit in there. And it seems like the same
3 years
fucking mechanism, taking place, right? Of like people finding like in this sea of like a drunken conference, right? Finding like this handful of people who are, trying to not drink or thinking about not drinking or whatever, right?
It was very cool. Yeah. I mean, there was somebody celebrated their 3-year anniversary at our meeting, and they had never been to an outside meeting before.
See, that's
3 years.
so wild, because like when I think about like early recovery for me, it was like me and a bunch of other people in their mid-20s who were all just like trying to figure out how to like live life, and there was all this camaraderie, and we were all up in each other's business all the time, and you just wander around until you saw someone you knew. And
I think the business itself lends itself to the terminal uniqueness. Like, people in the music business feel, they're a little bit like, I'm not going to go to a church basement and sit and listen to like somebody talk about like 12 steps. And then plus the people with between 6 months and 3 years all, went through COVID and have this different like, things are different than when we all got clean and sober, but it was
not like back in the day.
Yep.
Here we go again.
There
we go.
There it is. There it is.
But it was amazing because every meeting we had, somebody would raise their hand and be like, this is my first meeting and I have 6 months, and this is my first meeting and I have a year. And
it's very
it was really fucking
powerful.
cool.
But like,
man.
it's the same fucking thing of like bringing people in, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was cool. What was your take on it, being that it was your event, and that we got to make this thing happen?
Yeah, on the recovery side, I mean, I was not just I come from events promotion world too, so there's always like you want the room sell out, but also you recognize you're one. It's kind of like a growing position. So I sort of entered in with expectations that like if there was one other person than the two of us or the three of us there, then that'd be cool. If it was the three of us from like a sobriety perspective, like then that's perfect, So I kind of just entered in with no expectations other than hopefully we can create some awareness around it so people can see it, because from what I heard from people, like literally that's never been done before. That was a pioneering moment for conferences. So coming in and seeing whether I did room counts and including us, if there were 5 or 6 people, or I think 10 or something, for there to be 80% of those people to be under 3 years, or usually like under a year. And of those people, the vast majority were like first meeting. I mean, that was just like, to me, was a sellout show. Right. It was like, holy shit, because it's all about the beginner. It's all about the newcomer, right? It's like, we've heard this in rooms so many times again, which is good because we need to hear it. But you get to a certain point in your sobriety and part of our disease is forgetfulness, and some of it's like a willful forgetfulness, right? There's an agenda operating in the background, but we forget that rough space, that real rough space. I mean, thankfully, right? God, it would be fucking hard to still be in that place. Here, it would be kind of like, it'd be a different thing. I'll just say that. But it really is nice to sit inside of that and to feel the raw emotion, and it helps me go back and kind of not just revisit mentally, but emotionally, since emotions are one of my weak spots where I was at in that space. Fucking emotions. I was saying like,
who needs them
all the time?
I have like a super high pain threshold, like kind of stupid emotionally. 0. No. Fucking wimp. Total pushover. But to feel people in that space and to feel myself in that space on account of them was like really powerful. It's like, fuck yeah, man. Like I would not be here. And also, wow, this is so cool. This could be a moment. This could be changing you. This could be that moment. That because of your choice, you're making this choice. You're coming here.
Yeah. So Cody, fill in a little. We've got a blank spot here, right?
Yeah,
because we know you were in the straight edge scene.
Yeah,
we know you're sober now.
How did you break?
But something happened in between those two things.
I was thinking that'd be cool to kind of like bury the lead and then put it in the middle, and then get into like the sober
edge
story. Yeah, breaking the edge. Oh boy. So,
is that like a thing?
I mean,
that's a big thing.
Oh yeah, true till 21. Right?
Oh no.
And we were always like, fuck that shit. But like, full disclosure, I was straight edge. I'd never drank until I was 21. And part of it, this is like...
Was your first drink at Emos, like at work?
Yeah.
Was it?
Really?
Oh.
Yeah. So...
With the dude from the lower class Brad.
Those dudes are fucking great. That's what I fucking recognize you now too.
Yeah?
I remember seeing you. You went to Emos a lot, right?
All the time.
I fucking recognize you.
Yeah, we were there.
Yeah, we were all there. Especially in the context of those dudes and that the whole like super punk scene.
I saw Sick of It All at Emos, TSOL, Lower Class Brass a bunch of times, DRI, Johnny Cash. I mean, a bunch of bands that like
Crumb Bums.
Yes, absolutely. Fucking Crumb Bums.
David, all those dudes.
Yeah. You mentioned Gorilla Biscuits earlier. Like all that.
Oh, yeah.
And we just went and saw whatever. I mean, the Casualties seemed to play Emos like 4 times a year back then.
And now David's singing for the Casualties.
Yeah. It's
so
I think we saw Cro-Mags in Emos.
Yeah, no doubt.
The Cro-Mags or the fake mags?
That's
what they would call without John Joseph singing.
Yes.
But see, for me, back then, like hardcore was very much like I'll see it if I'll go see it, but like I'm not bumping it in the car. You know what I mean? Like I liked the crowd and the experience and like a real mosh pit.
Yeah.
Not this.
Not the fake karate?
Yeah, no, not that.
No?
Not that.
No.
Not the what is it? The crowd killing.
Yeah, none of that.
All that stuff.
None of that.
But
yeah,
the good times.
We would just show up at Emos. And I remember one time when we were like early on in it and like the addiction stuff was kind of starting, you know, we were trying to score weed at Emos, and I guess like the cops
Good call.
The cops were cracking down on walking that alley back there. So like people were very like, don't smoke right now. No. And we ended up having to go to the drag and just yelling the word pot.
Like when you're like Lower Haight or something. Weed.
Yeah.
Weed.
Yeah. No, we literally just stood like right where they used to do that little market on the drag.
Yeah.
You know, the hippies would be selling shit. Yeah.
My parents used to sell jewelry there.
Yeah. Well, I might have met your parents then. But we just yelled the word pot, and nobody came to sell us pot because we were like 16-year-olds. But this guy rolled up, and this was before real hipsters, but this guy was a hipster. Right, he rolled up with a little handlebar mustache and a bike. And he's like, "Do you guys want to buy some magic mushrooms?" And we were like, "Are you a cop? You have to tell us."
It's like, no. Yes. I watch TV.
Oh, you cannot be dishonest to me, police officer.
Yeah, exactly. Johnny Law, upstanding tactics.
We were like 16. We thought,
no, totally.
That's
yeah,
amazing.
no.
But
It's a trope.
okay, so when were you fucked up that you decided to not be fucked up?
Oh, I mean, this is gonna sound so fucking crazy, but like I also started when I was 14. I went to a cave in the Greenbelt, and I was reading a lot about Buddhism, and I had an enlightenment and started studying spirituality, and particularly meditation and Buddhism at that time. And then by the time I was 19, I had discovered a form of contemplation called Sufism, as well as started practicing Aikido. So that backstory to be like, I was like absorbed also in this inner life, right? This inner life that was spirituality to me. And then around that time, fast forward to being on the verge of being 21, from my perspective, my scene here had become degenerate in that you talked earlier about the different types of straight edge kids. I mean, the different types of straight edge kids when I was growing up were, interestingly, you said like the Discord dicks, and I get it. Ian MacKay said some famously really rude or annoying things.
It's just so fucking pretentious
to distance himself. And there were stories I heard from DC that were kind of like, came off holier than thou.
Yeah.
I'm trying to be careful because I have so much respect for those guys and what they did.
They're human.
They're human. But like the other, that to me was the cool side. You mix that in with like, you know, the big boys and this sort of like, hey, we're just doing our own thing. Like you do your thing, live and let live, which was also very Austin sort of like hippie punk vibe, you know? But the other straight edge was like New York hardcore, Northeast hardcore, especially when metal got more infused in hardcore and
breakdowns,
and then all the break, you know, fucking the chugga chugga hardcore, and then there were like a lot of straight edge hardcore gangs and people that would just go out to fuck people up, you know? And there was like a famous Earth Crisis beatdown video in the 90s that was like a skate video. It was at I think a skate.
The Boston beatdown stuff.
Yeah. So like we saw all that stuff. It was like watching news from afar, just being like, what is this? You know, it was so different than our sort of posi-core, you know, I think was the term back then.
Posi-core.
Posi-core. Yeah. So we didn't take that perspective at all. However, fast forward again, I felt like our scene had become degenerate because we all had that kind of community and that brother and sisterhood. And then all of a sudden there was a growing sense of like people who quit being straight edge and people being like, fuck that guy. And this person was always a poser and blah, blah, blah. And just like really highly judgmental.
Yeah.
And that affected me profoundly. It was kind of like a shattering of an ideal for me. And I went like, fuck, man. Well, if they're going to treat all these other people like they're better than them, is that what we are about? Is that who we are? And like, what are they going to do if I break edge? Because, you know, my perception of myself then was I was one of the OG godfathers of straight edge in Texas. I mean, like, and that was what people also put on me. So, just because the band we were in kind of like helped this resurgence or highlighted it, I don't know. When you're fucking a teenager, you have a pretty inflated sense of oneself, right? But I felt like, oh, this fucking OG straight edge godfather, you know, 19 or whatever, 20. What'll happen if I break edge? And it just disillusioned me and made me jaded. And I was like, fuck this. I don't want to drink, but I'm going to drink just to say fuck you to this as like, it's like, you know, being more punk, like just being like, it's actually not about any of this. It's about what was supposed to be behind this. And then, you know, you start drinking and creating rules about what you are and are not going to do.
Right.
And when you start doing that in a place like Emo's, which was a punk club in a broad sense of it, abrasive music, underground scene.
Anything abrasive.
Which was essentially people lived the lifestyle of like bikers there, you know, and parties certainly. And there were bikers there for periods of time to where, you know, that was not going to be the drinking culture that I was exposed to or that I embraced. So, you know, you'd say the rest was history, but it was kind of a foregone conclusion between the environment I was in and the genetics and the what I am that I brought to the table. That just was kind of like, good luck with that.
And did you have that, like saying it now, like, you know, like, hey, it was a foregone conclusion that like once I started drinking, it was going to get bad. Like, did you have that foresight in that moment or like any kind of sense of like, you know, like this is
fuck yeah.
Like, I know where this is going to end up, but it's okay.
But there's this like, we all, those of us in recovery or not in recovery, we've all approached these choices from different spaces, even if similar, but there's an underlying fucking arrogance to it that is kind of like either I'm not going to be the unlucky one or I'm too smart. Right.
Yeah.
And it's some mix. It's more complicated than that, but it's really kind of like not me. I'm special, you know? And I was fully fucking aware of what I was doing, but I was also thought because I'd had all this, some level of spiritual training and I came from this space and I was making this intentional choice to be disruptive. And, you know, I was like vegan at the time. And, you know, I was kind of like in this on a trip on myself, like, you know, I'm above all this. And I even thought like, you know, what my father made decisions to not engage in and what my grandfather grew up in, I'm like too enlightened or too smart to get caught up in. I don't feel like shy saying it because I told him like later, I was like, I thought literally like, I mean, he's a fucking very smart guy. So was my grandfather. But it was like, I just thought, these fucking guys, when they grew up, this was all just normalized and blah, blah. Not like me. Yeah. I'm special. Like, I have this knowledge and welcome to my show, you know? And it was like, and that was, of course, was the beginning of the end. Because
was there ever like, I can drink as long as I don't eat meat Was that ever?
Oh, no. I never, there's no cross. I had very different reasons. I didn't not drink for like animal rights reasons, though I did meet people that did. And that's another weird rabbit hole to go down. However, yeah, those two things weren't connected. However, I created all these rules, and I'd only drink so many times a week, or I wouldn't do drugs. And, you know, it was like, there was like speed and coke being done off the top of the bar at the time. And I guess so there were a lot of scary things going on that too, objectively, that I was like, oh, I don't think I'm going to go from being straight edge to smoking crack.
Yeah.
Even if someone is smoking crack in a 4 foot by 4 foot office with me, like this is like a little too much. Yeah. Even if technically I'm smoking crack right now, this freaks me out.
Right.
That and to full disclosure, you know, I talked about like I had already had half a dozen dead friends at that point, and most of them from heroin at that point through high school. And of course, older friends and family members of my friends who had passed away. So I entered all this well armed. I mean, that's so like all to say I had no excuses. However, like it did give me pause on certain things, and it was like a slow run into it. Though, you know, by the time I got running, you know, my legs didn't stop.
Yeah.
And then how long until that was just not manageable anymore?
Shit. I mean, you know, in clarity of hindsight, who knows when the not manageable started happening?
Right.
But
when did you become aware of the non-manageability
or wanting to do something about it?
I mean, when other waves of friends starts dying or having heart failure, all these sorts of things, it starts getting fucking real again. Like not this was a friend, but not like my family, you know, where you just spent years and years of your life with. I don't know. That started making it real. All that started cascading at the same time. I think I moved and lived in San Francisco for nearly 2 years, following a girl out there. And that's when I discovered real drugs. Yeah. I'll just put it that way. And all of a sudden,
in San Francisco, did everybody talk about like, oh man, in the Gilman Street days, you know, this is way better scene.
a little bit, but I didn't meet too many. There wasn't like really a thriving punk or like rock scene. I'll just say in the city proper. Though I did live in Oakland for a while. In fact, the first people I met in Oakland were some punks at like a squat, and I nearly got stabbed to death, and that was like an eye opener to like, oh, this isn't Austin, Texas.
No.
Right.
Maybe I should pay attention to the burnt out cars on cinder blocks and the fact that I don't know where the fuck I am. I'm just some idiot kid, you know.
All to say, followed a girl in San Francisco.
Just like, you know, had some great experiences, worked at record stores, made awesome friends, but like, I think because of that dysfunctional relationship and my choices there, really kind of crossed many of the lines that I'd set for myself. So when I came back to Austin, limping, like hair falling out from stress and just in a bad shape, everyone that I was close to here was already in their own rabbit hole. And, you know, if you how to put this, it's like in the drug world, it's like you're with us or I wouldn't say against us, but like you're with us or you don't exist, or you're with us or you're like, maybe you're a narc, or what's your problem? And you're not invited and you're not in it. So I kind of picked up on that, which was a weird feeling, I think, from my friends, and went, fuck it. And I was having all sorts of mental problems at the time and was just kind of like struggling to get through the day and was like, whatever. But I think I would visit San Francisco twice a year or once a year. And then there was a time in particular when I went there and I told you a little bit about this. I'd met a guy there at, I don't know if it wasn't the Black Cat. It was a club I'm pretty sure was closed, South of Market. One of the few punk clubs that was there in the early aughts. And there's this big fucking tattooed head to hand sort of dude with the leather jacket on. And I was like, oh, this guy looks like one of my homies back in Austin, you know. I was like, I'm going to chat with him. But I was sitting next to him at the club, and I saw a tattoo on the back of his head, and it was a heart with wings, which just happens to be a symbol of the Sufism that I practiced through my life. And it's like, this is like deep cut lore, where it's like, who the knows about this? Like nobody. I'd never met another punk kid who'd ever heard of this. And that order being very heavily, the Hazrat Inayat Khan, the founder of the Inayatiya order, was a musician, and it's very focused through the framework of sound and and music kind of framing life and spirituality. So I got to talking to this guy, and it's kind of like, yeah, hey man, cool tat, you know, do you know what that is? And then we were chatting, his older dude, and I was just noticing him, the other guys weren't drinking, and was like, oh, this is weird, especially because I'd never met, like, you know, kind of like a grizzly hardcore punk who wasn't three sheets to the wind, you know, I mean, just keeping it real. And he did know what it was and knew all about it. And then he was like, hey, I'm Noah, good to meet you. Also, you know, just so you know, like, we don't drink, you know, it's kind of not cool, you know, if you want to hang out with us, cool, but like, that's not our thing. And we have this thing called Dharma Punks, if you're ever interested in learning more about.
So it was Noah Levine.
Noah Levine. Yeah. And I hung out with him 1 or 2 times. Definitely I was not sober, so I didn't at all get what was going on there. But when I came back to San Francisco, one of the second or third to last times when I was visiting with friends before I had a kid, I was walking down Powell and Ellis, and I saw a Chronicle, and it had a fucking picture of him on the front of the Chronicle. And I was like, what? This fucking punk rock Noah? What is this? And then I didn't know his last name, come to Noah Levine. Yeah. Stephen Levine was like a famous transcendentalist meditationist I knew about. My parents had his books on the shelves, and he had just written a book. I believe it was called Dharma Punks. Yeah, it's like had him with his tattooed hands praying on the front. And I picked that up, and I was on like an insane bender when I was there. And just like completely like one of my top 5 out of control moments. And I'd started thumbing through it just out of curiosity, and was journaling at the time. And I just had these moments where you just get fucking hit in the chest with like the truth, like crying like a fucking newborn baby by myself in between, you know, debaucherous nights, and just being like, fuck man, like I've got a fucking problem. Like, this speaks to me so fucking hard right now, you know?
Yeah.
And, but it wasn't until later that, you know, I was offered a choice by a judge that I think that really came to a head. That was a moment though, when it was several years in advance, that I started being like, what am I going to do at this? And then doing that kind of thing, like turning away, or trying new formulas in the alchemy lab, or like hanging out, taking breaks and hanging out with dudes I knew in recovery, and kind of getting that energy. And I mean, I have to say that as much as that wasn't what brought me into rooms, there was something there. I'm so corny. I hate all this corny shit in AA, but it's like there was something there that I wanted.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The ability to talk to you and look you in the eye and speak my truth and speak at all, and to be able to do that. I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And sure, part of that was addiction. I think part of that's too my neurobrain setup, you know?
Yeah.
But like I couldn't do that. And to be around dudes in particular, because it was guys that I knew that were sober, and especially a guy that ended up being my sponsor later, it just fucking unnerved me, you know, to be like, here I am, I think I'm such a fucking tough guy, and I've been inside of all this violence and all this crazy shit and all these crazy choices I've made, and like literally willing to do all sorts of bad guy stuff, you know? But like, my knees are shaking looking at this person's eyes, like, what the fuck is going on?
Because of those emotions.
You're right. It's the emotions. Yeah. So like, you know, that stuck with me, and, you know, still sticks with me when I think like, I wonder if other people experience that too. And, you know, if that I resonate that now, you know?
Well, like as you're talking, like I think, you know, before I ultimately got sober, right, I can look back at like the 6 years leading up to that, and there's like these little nuggets of like glimpses of, you know, meeting someone in recovery, or having a friend decide to get sober, or reading something, or like, I remember like scoring like enough dope to keep me good for a few days, which never happened. And like, which should be like, oh my God, like I'm set for 4 days, right? And I remember like doing a shot, and then like ending up in front of a church in Laredo, like on my knees crying, like, you know, like there's all those moments that kind of like, I don't know, to me, like when I finally got sober, like it wasn't so much like something super amazing happened at that treatment center that was different that I got it. It was like all these little pieces kind of finally came together, you know, to help me take that step, like for real, for once. And it sounds like you had something similar, right? Like you had these different experiences, and
it's
meeting Noah Levine, and reading the book, and
and also to see that it was like fucking cool, because I don't think I'd seen a version of it. It's like such a cheap trick in my mind, but to be like, oh, regular ass sober person, like, okay. Okay, grandpa,
right.
But then it's like, motherfucker with a face tattoo, tell me more.
Yeah.
Like, it's so fucking stupid. But like to be like, the guys from Rancid are at the fucking Dharma Punks and blah, blah. I wish I'd been in those meetings just because I'm shallow like that.
Yeah.
But like, it was like, fuck, man, like this is like,
wait,
kind of
who
a
from
cool
Rancid
thing.
is sober?
I don't think you could say.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if that's all public, but
never mind. I had no idea.
Just in bands. As an example, like cool bands that was like, oh man, like I got to pay attention to this. I might know these other dudes in blues bands that we grew up with that are 60, but like these are like my heroes.
That's exactly what I needed. It was like people that I either knew from the streets or people that I would have hung out with on the street that had gotten clean. Because, God, I just remember hearing at so many H&I meetings and detox, like people like, oh dude, we get fucking crazy. We go to fucking Denny's and stay up till 4 a.m. and just laugh. I'm like, you guys are fucking nerds.
Bro, what you just described was like straight edged in a fucking box, So like one of the great things about being sober, and I did, at that point I'd kind of aged out of a lot of that or had needed to make different choices. But like it was kind of like, oh, guess what? All that dumb fucking shit you did being a straight edge kid and just cool, weird, good times, like good, clean fun, kind of. It's like, how to do all that and all the like the other dumb shit that you learn how to do and learn how to be more social with people, drinking and bartending and all those sort of things. Like that's you.
Yeah.
That's you. That was one of the lies I told myself, right? We always have these, the lies that we tell ourselves. Well, I would, but I can't because what my lie was, I bartend and this is all I know how to do. And I tried bartending before I was sober or trying being sober and like, well, it just makes money. And then if I don't make money, then I won't make a living. If I don't make a living, then I'll be homeless and then I'll be doing more drugs. Right. So I have to be doing fucking cocaine and whiskey every night because if not, then I'm going to like be a real loser.
Homeless.
You just got to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be a loser.
The mental gymnastics,
So we're getting close to time here, but we do have to talk about the important work that NIVA does or has done.
Yeah. No, thank you. I'll try to ramp through it. So 10 years in emos, 10 or 11 years in that world with some of the most insane times and scariest times and beautiful times and all of it. I mean, right, you experience a lot of that. It's hard to, there's always that guilt of looking back, but also like there was some legit amazing moments that happened there and lifelong bonds, that happened there, even in a dumb context and sometimes. Then I moved on to Mohawk, which is a club at 10th and Red River down the street from emos that my buddy Graham was involved with and had left emos and started booking. And then I thought, I'll go down here and maybe I'll reconnect with this one friend of mine. And maybe, I interviewed for a job there. And then it's like, well, we know about you emos boys, you're infamous. And there will be none of that sort of stuff here. And I was kind of like lame, but also kind of like good because I'm in fucking
those shenanigans.
I'm in court right now, and I don't. And even in my dumb brain, I was like, if I write down my job as emos, they're going to know how important and crazy we are, and we'll be like, you can't be a father,
Right.
I mean, true, but no one fucking knew, Of course, I go there, and it's exact same thing as it always was, and drugs and dumb fuckery, and but. Around that time, I got offered the choice, got into a custody battle, got offered the choice to be a father or to be a fuck up, and chose being a father. And part of that was, the mandatory going to AA. And I connected with one of those guys who I always just, I'd say coincidentally, but life brought me into that person's presence and into a men's group from Austin called the Liars Club. And
the Liars Club.
And Don, then you might have known Don, who I don't think is in Austin, hadn't been for some time, but and that, that started me off on
Would you go when it was the nooner on the backstage over there at
Spider House?
Yeah.
And Arts, back in Arts.
Yeah.
First meeting was at Arts, and I was telling him to walk in and to be like, I'm sure I was like shaking, you know, for many reasons.
Yeah.
And just being like, what the fuck do I do? And the guy Don being like, I don't know, man. I fucking see people like you every day. Like, I don't know because I was like, can you sign this? It's like, you're gonna have to wait till the end of the meeting. And then I'll let you know if I'm going to or not, you know, because of course it was transactional to me. And I sat down, and then there are fucking teenagers in there, and there was a guy wheeled in who was probably 85 on oxygen, who was sober for like 60 years, and to be in a room full of men sharing their feelings like that, I mean, and it gets realer than real, right? It's like penetratingly, there's something really powerful.
Honest, I only went to Liars Club because I thought the name was cool.
Yo, no lie though.
That's what got me there.
I asked a friend who wasn't sober, but it was an old school punk gal, and she was like, "Oh, there's probably 2 rooms you'll like because they're cool." There was like 1313 and Liars Club, and I was like, and Liars Club happened to just be closer to me, honestly, and the drive and my schedule, and I was like, fucking Liars Club.
That sounds cool. Yeah.
So like flip up the
compared to like I don't know, Wild with Flair. I don't want to go there.
Right. I mean, it's shallow, but shallow and connected. All to say, like, I'm getting back into the sobriety story. I know we have limited time, but like, ended up getting my shit together, working the program, becoming the GM of Mohawk, running that place successfully, and growing that venue, 1,000 cap venue for 10 years. Through that process, had other life experiences that made me not just realize, but know that I couldn't just sell beer and tickets for a living.
Yeah.
And then helped co-create the Red River Cultural District, forming a merchants association downtown, which is an association of music venues, a music-centered association, including other cultural tourism businesses like hotels and restaurants and bars. And
was that in response to when all the people who lived down there started complaining about like the sound systems and the bass and all that, when they were starting to do all those ordinances?
In part, I mean, literally across the street from Mohawk was like a rundown ice house, a rat-filled rundown ice house that got demoed and turned into a condo block. And then the condo block sold itself on convenience, downtown walkability, you know, quiet neighborhoods for kids and dogs. And it's like literally in the heart of the music experience in Austin, Texas. Like also across the street from Stubbs with the stage pointed right at it. You know, it's like false advertising. So a lot of conflict was set up, and a lot of those kind of city growth conflicts, as well as that, pushed me when I realized I'm working this fucking hard to not just take care of my family, but my family of friends and people that work with me, and making sure we all have jobs. And it's like, this can all just be undone by some grouchy neighbor. It got me activated. That with the tragedy at South by Southwest in 2014 was really the big incident, and doing triage on the scene, and, you know, experiencing a mass casualty event on our doorstep. And I mean, it really profoundly changed the way I walked in the world.
Was that the Tyler the Creator show?
That was, was the
my girlfriend Gabby was there. Gabby was there.
Tyler, that was another crazy thing that happened at that same South by. But Tyler was about to come on stage at Mohawk, and X was playing, you know, and it was a House of Vans show. And Tyler had just tweeted to his fans, "I heard this small club isn't going to have enough room for all of y'all, but you know what? Fuck the rules. Show up outside. We're going to like storm this place." And I'd been in like crowd surge situations at South by, and it was like some of the scariest stuff I'd ever experienced, where you're like, I could be trampled to death. This is happening. I can't, there's no control, even with the police. So like, I was standing in the street in the crowd of people that were line queuing for his show, walked inside when literally sat down in my chair in the office as the car drove through. There was a vehicle that the police were chasing a few blocks away from feeder of 8th or 9th and 35, and that individual drove through the barriers and drove through a crowd of 300 people and injured dozens and unfortunately killed 4 people. So hugely tragic, and, you know, impacted me. And that pushed me to kind of reemerge from the four walls of Mohawk and start really looking not just at my people in the box and looking at my people as a community in the music community of Austin and recognizing through simple business techniques that, you know, it was one step forward, two steps back for Austin music. And in some ways, it's still one step forward and back just because of affordability and economic pressures.
Yeah.
So that got me engaged in community organizing and advocacy, which then got funding for the district that culminated in me taking on that job as the executive director of that 501c3 in late 2018. And then as I figured out what to do with that and how to move things forward from the district perspective, pandemic hit. And Austin, you know, when I tell a story, Austin was ground zero for pandemic, not for the disease, but for the music industry, because
they canceled South by.
March 10th, they canceled South by. And
I remember telling Chelsea when they canceled South by, I was like, oh, we're fucked now.
Yeah.
Like if they cancel, if the city of Austin was like, you know, that $500 million, we don't need it this year.
Right. You were a smart one, and smarter than me, the people I was dealing with on the government level, because the domino fell. We rebooked all of our venues within 36 hours. And then within 10 hours of that announcement, the world was shut down. Right. And I'd worked in the industry my whole life, so I knew what many others didn't outside of industry, which was in Austin in particular. That could account, you talked about the $500 million, but for like small venues, that could be anywhere between 5% of annual net to like 50 or 60%.
Yeah.
That was in part the money I put myself through college bartending with was from South by. And that's what people either planned small vacations with in the summer or literally had their entire annual budget for their rent and being able to eat. Right?
Built around March.
Yeah. So at that moment, knowing how fragile our community is in terms of mental health, you know, second highest incident of mental illness and addiction in all economic sectors of the U.S. Only to
what's number one? Lawyers,
healthcare.
Yeah,
spooky stuff. You must know all about this, right? It's real big deal. I knew that the outcomes were going to be really scary for us, for our people, and for our community. I mean, you know, I've already lost more people than is even worth. It feels like bragging at some point. The death count is so high, but you know, so those 2 months you were talking about, I was like picking up the phone March 10th and like going into full workaholic insanity mode, like no sleep, because I knew that people were going to die, not because of this disease or anything that we fucking understood about it, because nobody did, but because of the fact that everyone lived check to check, and in a very tenuous place in many cases. So
I was in a very different spot, you know, like,
and nationally there were other people like me and my peers here in Austin, and some of my peers here met with peers across the country, and by April 6th or April 9th, 2020, came to form another association that was called NIVA, National Independent Venue Association, because while I was fighting for all of what I knew was going to be disaster relief coming, it was like, this is going to happen, because the alternate is like complete collapse of society. Like people can't eat and they all get evicted. Like this is, I studied history at UT, by the way. So like I had a little bit of like data there to go, okay, this is what happens when X% of people, blah, 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 boring, you know? But the sort of collective organizing we did locally then translated to this national stage. The work that many of us who met each other living on Zoom 20 hours a day over a pandemic brought in over a $500 million in local disaster relief that helped really people stay alive and have a hope of ever having a job again or reopening a venue. The district gave out over $250,000 in food grants, HEB gift cards, to just anyone who worked in the music industry or the service industry. But the collective work,
HEB always comes through.
HEB for through. Governor, you know.
Yes.
But collectively, the work we did, we went from being like, you know, booking shows and just like kind of like misfits and outsiders to lobbying congresspersons and senators, and we collectively passed the SOS Act, which is the largest arts grant in the history of the country, which awarded $16.25 billion with a B to arts and venues. So there wouldn't be, if we hadn't received the money that we did, like there would be, this would be us having a, remember back in the day when there used to be,
there was venues,
used to be music venues and shows, you know, like
there used to be a thing called society, children.
Right. How do you get these microphones to work?
Before the metaverse.
Right. So like very cool thing. And then, you know, I came on 2 years ago to left Red River Cultural District as executive director to come on to be the chief operating officer of NIVA to help transition NIVA from this political movement, this cultural movement, into being a trade association.
Yeah, something sustainable.
How to build things brick by brick, you know, which is what we've all done as DIY people who have been entrepreneurs, either as musicians or venue or festival or promoter operators. You figure it out and you get it done. And
oh man, we could get into a whole thing about the collapse of the festival industry, but I don't think we have time for that.
He has to come back.
Yeah, you got to come back.
You have to come back.
And this is how I met Jason.
Yeah.
Interestingly, not through an Austin connection, because it turns out we share a lot of friends and we haven't even really gone down that rabbit hole, but because of one of our members in Chicago who's not part of the world of punk rock or sobriety, but is really focused on health and wellness and well-being of industry, and was like, you know, let's connect the dots and see if things can work. And then all of a sudden it was love at first sight.
Yeah. It was definitely a moment.
History. Well, we are getting towards the end of our time here. We're actually over our time here.
Yeah, but you definitely got to come back. This is very insightful, and you know, I think we're going to be doing a lot of work together in the future. Just judging by the success of what we had going in New Orleans a couple weeks ago, like I'm very excited to see what's next for all of us together.
I think it's going to be cool.
Yeah. It's going to be great.
I don't know if you mentioned that you've seen several episodes of the show. I don't know if you've seen that I have a slowly building anxiety that takes place from my phone being on airplane mode.
No, I didn't pick up on that.
And typically when we get to about an hour, I'm like, fuck, I'm out. And I think this is maybe the longest we've ever recorded with my phone off.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what the count is.
I can't even know.
How many missed calls or emails.
But it is time for something that we like to call Rapid Fire Question Time.
It's Rapid Fire Question Time.
Jason, your guest. You go first.
Yikes.
What is one band that, judging by your friend circle, your age, people would assume that you love, but you just don't?
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, it's funny getting older because 20 and 30-year-olds' perspective of what was like it music it's very different.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. That's a hard one.
It's supposed to be rapid.
I would say growing up it was the Misfits because I didn't give a shit about the Misfits because why? Here. Because everybody was like, the Misfits are so fucking cool, and I was like, whatever, that's lame.
Yeah. I'm really fucking excited for the Misfits coming to Austin. I'm sorry.
Later I was like,
I'm like,
this is genius.
Hybrid Moments is one of the fucking bangers now.
Who were these?
Static
Jesus.
Age. I could play the Static Age album front to back.
There's just me being oppositional. Fine.
All right, you know it's coming. Ben and Jerry's comes to you. They say, hey, man, we want to do a signature ice cream flavor. What do you put in it? What do you call it?
Oh, fuck, man. So many good flavors. I thought about this back and forth, trying to figure it out and make it complicated, but making it complicated is what keeps killing me. So I'm just going to go what I love. And
vanilla.
No, the pistachio ice cream they had. If they just fucking put a cool punk rock name on it, that would be like my ice cream, because I'm just ride or die that pistachio ice cream.
Punky pistachio.
Yeah.
Pistachianarchy.
Like
anti-pistachionment.
Oh, that's a good one.
Pistachblishment. Yes. It's additionally stupid, which is a favorite thing of mine. Stupid things.
All right, Joseph's least favorite question I always ask. Paranormal experience?
Oh God. I was watching the show, and out of all those questions, which do give me anxiety about, this was like the biggest one because I shared this with my father a few weeks ago before the conference. So I was like, how honest can I be? And
shit.
I know we don't have much time, and
Hold on to your hat.
And also, I worry about people's. I worry about people's worries about my mental health. Sharing all
We're
my
going to
stories.
confirm it here,
but exactly good.
Let's
office
go.
No, I've always had a proclivity to being able to have, we'll just say, paranormal experiences. So I've had very complex and lengthy experiences that I could talk about the paranormal. Not like aliens or anything.
Like spirit dimension.
No disrespect to aliens, but it's just not something I have any awareness around
yet.
Yeah. Yes. Knock on wood, or show me. I really don't want life to be that exciting. Mostly about the unseen world and like angels and demons and what these words that we attach to things like ghosts and poltergeists and all this sort of stuff. I mean,
we're going to mark that one as a yes, Joe.
That's a big fat yes.
That's like 2 out of like 30.
I would say since I was like probably 6 or 7. So this is like a very early age through my life and through all of it. So take that, doubters. My brain is not completely fried, at least in regards to this ghosts.
You're having one of those days. Those pesky emotions are happening. You need to reframe your state to, continue forward in a positive manner. What's your go-to music, genre or band or album, kind of whatever?
Yeah. I would say probably, when my, I have anxiety amongst other things, and when that peaks or when I'm feeling overwhelmed, Dead Can Dance.
Yeah.
That might also be the band no one would expect I would like. Dead Can Dance is like one of my favorite bands.
Yeah.
It sounds like y'all know who they are.
Oh, yeah.
Very kind of like gothy world music type stuff. And I have...
This is my Dead Can Dance. Dance.
You like this? Ghosts.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that band. They're amazing, and you wouldn't expect it.
Yeah.
All right. Favorite 12-step quote.
Ugh. My most recent one is, and one that I resonate with now, particularly in the world that we share and how troubling things seem to continually be, is it's easier to put on slippers than to carpet the world.
That's a good one.
That's a good one. That's good.
That's a good one.
Well, we have reached the end of our time today. So thank you so much for taking time out of your day to come down, talk to us, share both personal and professional and everything in between, just chopping it up about music. I have so many like other like Texas bands and like scene people that I want to be like, do you know so-and-so? But we can save that for episode 2. The last thing we do on the show is just give you a moment where you have the floor, where you can kind of promote your stuff, tell people where to find you, leave a little heartfelt message, kind of whatever you want to do. This time is yours.
Oh, yikes. I was a bass player. So I'm not used to hopping out on center stage. However, you've seen I don't have a problem talking once you get me there. No, I'd say it's important to know that you're not alone. And whether that pertains to sobriety or anything, particularly coming from a world of outsiders that have found community with one another. I've found community with people. I've found connection with people.
Yeah.
Isolation kills.
You're not that unique.
Right. Yeah. But to know you're not in this alone, but more importantly, we're all in this together. We're all in this together, and literally anything can be done from that place. And know there's people to talk to.
Love it. That's the episode subtitle. We're all in this together.
Boom.
Yeah.
That's the labor movement motto. We're all in this together.
So again, thank you again for your time. It was a great conversation.
We didn't even touch on Bad Brains or much into Gorilla Biscuit. Yeah. That you have to come back now.
We'll get there. To you, our loyal listener / viewer, wherever you get our show, don't forget to like, review, follow, tell your friends, play this on the stereo wherever you work. Do people still say stereo?
I don't know.
I don't know. But thank you for your time as well.
Back in my time,
and
we had stereos and we liked them.
Yeah. And as we like to say here, There's 1,000 ways in and 1,000 ways out.
1,000 ways out.
And we hope you find yours. One of them? What?
At least one.
All right.